Thank you all for joining us. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I'm Raman Chawla, and I'm a Deputy Attorney General with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm honored to be here as we come together to celebrate the rich and diverse cultures, histories, and contributions of the AANHPI community. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items to ensure a smooth and enjoyable experience for everyone. First, this webinar is being recorded. After the program, we will be uploading a link to the recording onto the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion page on the LPS intranet. Second, this session is being conducted as a webinar, so all audience members are muted and not on camera. This is intentional to keep the focus on our speakers today. Third, during the panel discussion, we encourage you to ask questions as we go along. Please type any questions into the chat box option, and time permitting, our speakers will address them. This Heritage Month is celebrated every May to recognize the incredible impact that members of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community have had on our nation's history, culture, and achievements. From the earliest documented landing in the year 1587 on the continental US to the present-day leaders in various fields, this community has played an integral role in shaping the United States. You have probably heard a variety of terms in addition to AANHPI that are used to refer to this community, such as AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islanders, or APA, Asian Pacific American. While it's impossible to come up with a single phrase that fully describes the array of ethnicities and cultures of this demographic category, we recognize the diversity of backgrounds and experiences among this community. Our guest panelists today reflect that rich diversity. As our special guest today, we are honored to have leading members of the AANHPI community who pursued different paths to activism and in the process shattered stereotypes and changed our communities for the better. You'll hear more about them in just a moment. But first, we'll hear a brief message from Attorney General Platkin. The Attorney General sends his regrets that his schedule would not permit him to join us live and asked us to share his recorded remarks with you. Allow me to preface that recording by telling you just a bit about Attorney General Platkin. AG Platkin was appointed by Governor Phil Murphy to serve as the state's 62nd Attorney General on Feb 3rd, 2022. He has since led our department in its important work that touches upon nearly every aspect of life in New Jersey. AG Platkin has consistently evidenced strong support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Indeed, within months of his appointment, Attorney General Platkin issued an executive directive that formally established the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion within the department. We are grateful for that support, and of course, happy to share this message from Attorney General Platkin with you. Attorney General Platkin, thank you so much. It is now time to turn to our all-star panel discussion, which will be moderated by Assistant Attorney General Sudha Raja. Attorney AAG Raja currently serves as the Chief of Staff in the Division of Law, one of the largest divisions within the Department of Law and Public Safety, and the single largest employer of New Jersey lawyers in the state. In that capacity, Ms. Raja manages the administrative, operational, budgetary, and personnel activities in the Division of Law. Ms. Raja joined the department as a line Deputy Attorney General in 2001 and moved up to serve as an Assistant Section Chief of the Transportation, Construction, and Condemnation Section within the division, providing counsel and handling complex construction litigation on behalf of various state agencies, and then served as the Deputy Chief of Staff. On a personal note, I was privileged to work with Sudha as we both served on the inaugural leadership team for our department's Asian Pacific American Employee Resource Group. Outside of the department, Sudha has been active in various bar associations, including the Asian Pacific American Lawyers Association of New Jersey, where she currently serves as treasurer. Let me now turn over the microphone to AAG Raja.
Thank you, Raman, for this wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I also would like to thank AG Platkin for his remarks and supporting the diverse culture in the department. I am honored to be part of today's program celebrating the AANHPI community. Before I introduce the panelists, I would like to say a few words about my background. I am from a small conservative town in India, came to this country after my marriage. At that time, most of the women, not the men, from my hometown were not educated, and my family too, they were not educated. It was a generational issue where they did not give an importance to women's education. That, of course, is not the same today. Things have changed drastically. But when I came here, I did not have a college degree. Interested in pursuing education and working, with my wonderful husband's support, I completed my undergrad. And then with kids and life, I could not, get into workforce. So when my older son started his high school, I started law school at Temple School of Law. Shortly after law school, I started working here at the Division of Law. Regarding making a change, it was great and a defining moment for me when a college for women was started in my hometown in India. Focusing here, I am involved in a number of community activities and have been an active member for quite a few years at APALA, New Jersey, which is Asian Pacific American Lawyers Association of New Jersey. And I've held, board positions there. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful panelists for all attorneys who have shattered stereotypes and made changes in the AANHPI community. First, I would like to introduce Jeff Chang, who is a founding board member of AAPI New Jersey, formerly known as AAPI Montclair, and currently advises the organization on policy and advocacy matters. He has over 15 years of experience in legal, government, and nonprofit sectors. AAPI New Jersey is a statewide organization founded in 2021 to activate the power of New Jersey's over 1 million Asian Americans to bring out a more just, inclusive future for all through coalition building, legislative and policy advocacy, private and public partnerships. Its services range from mental health, youth programs, anti-hate, and supporting community resilience. Through its Teach Asian American Stories initiative, AAPI New Jersey is leading the statewide implementation of Governor Murphy's landmark AAPI curriculum mandate. Raised in New Jersey, Jeff graduated from Rutgers Law School, where he was awarded the Eli Jarmel Award for highest proficiency in public interest law. He is also a board member of RISE and is on the leadership team of a children's advocacy organization. Next, I would like to introduce Rippy Carda, who I've known for quite some time, is an Associate General Counsel at Verizon Communications, as an Associate General Counsel in the Public Policy, Law and Security Department of Verizon Communications, RIPI handles contracts for sourcing involving human resources, benefits and plans, supplier diversity, advertising agencies, contact centers, contingent workforce, and executive recruiting. She serves as the Saba, New Jersey immediate past president, chair of the Asian American Pacific Islander Commission of New Jersey, co-chair of the New Jersey Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, treasurer of Women of Excellence Network, and advisory board member of Center for Conference. I could go on, but in the interest of time, I had to shorten that, Rupi. Next, I would like to introduce Sapna Shah, who also I've known for quite some time, is a partner at Raynon Coughlin Mincello LLC. Ms. Shah specializes in resolving the complex issues deriving from administration of local, county, and state government. Prior to joining the law firm, Ms. Shah maintained her own practice for over a decade long with working as assistant corporation counsel for the city of Jersey City. In April of 2011, she was elected to the Board of Education in Edison, New Jersey. Thereafter, in 2013, she was elected to be councilwoman for Edison. Prior to entering the field of law, Ms. Shah was a financial analyst at Dun & Bradstreet Corporation and an associate at Johnson & Johnson Sales and Logistics Company. Last but not least, Maria Vallejo, who I also have known for some time, the bar organizations, is a litigator and a partner at Chasen, Lamparello, Malone, and Capuzzo in Secaucus. She is the immediate past president of Hudson County Bar Association, where last year she became the first Filipina American president of the organization. Last week, Maria was sworn in as a trustee of the New Jersey State Bar Association, where she sat as the chair of the Diversity Committee for 3 years. Maria is an adjunct professor of law at Rutgers Law School, teaching land use law and practice. She is involved in a multitude of professional and charitable organizations where she has gained recognition for her contributions and achievements. Before becoming an attorney, Maria worked as a journalist for 10 years. Thank you all for being here today. Well, it'll be interesting to know from each of you how you got involved in the advocacy work and speaking out for the community. First, I would like to hear from Jeff.
Thanks, Sudha, and thank you so much for the Attorney General's office hosting this panel and all of your incredible work. It's been a privilege as an organization and also personally working with several departments at the AG's office. It's very challenging work, and really our gratitude goes out to all of you. This is a very personal question to me, and I think my co-panelists, we all come to advocacy in so many different ways. I think for me, what's interesting about my background is that I've always been an advocate. I was exposed to advocacy at a young age. My mom worked at a domestic violence shelter in New York City, one of the first shelters for Asian women and led by Asian women. It was very inspiring, looking back on it, having that experience. Up until recently, when we started AAPI Montclair, now AAPI New Jersey, I spent my entire career, advocating for others, advocating for kids in the child welfare system, in the juvenile justice system, advocating for the LGBTQ community, advocating for this and advocating for that, but I never advocated for the Asian American community. It's in some ways embarrassing. I never joined Asian groups in high school or college. I didn't join the Asian Student Association in law school. I'm finally now, a member of the Asian Bar Association here in New Jersey. And then when I look back as to why, I realize that it's often very difficult to advocate for yourself, right? To represent yourself, to speak up for yourself. And for me, speaking out for my community has been challenging because I've had to look inward, right, at some of those painful moments, in my life and some of that trauma. One of the moments that I really confronted over the last few years, and I actually did it with the Clear Institute, at the AG's office was really processing, what happened to my grandmother 20 years ago. When, she basically helped care for me. She spent many long stints, from Taiwan to live with us in New Jersey. And one day she walked to the grocery store and was caught shoplifting. Looking back on it, it was a kind of a sign of her decline. But she was arrested. The police were called. She couldn't communicate with the police. She was frustrated. And then she found herself, knocked to the ground and handcuffed. And she spent many hours detained in a police car as they drove around the different neighborhoods. She was speaking Chinese, and she was absolutely terrified. We later had to deal with the collateral consequences, her immigration status, her criminal court case. But the most painful part for me was how that experience traumatized her so much, where she never returned back to New Jersey. And she basically gave up her dream of becoming a naturalized citizen because of that. And I think about all the years that were lost. So thinking about those traumatic incidents, I felt for many years ashamed. I internalized these things that I think immigrants often face. I wished my grandmother spoke English. I even kind of blamed her. I wished my family was more normal, or that, we ate food that didn't smell funny. And it really wasn't until recently, and I'll go into a little bit more about how we started the organization later, that I turned to advocacy to turn that painful memory, into action and look at how could we change the system, right? And, I was able to share it with, a shout out to the detectives, Janet Tai and Taryn Seidner with the Clear Institute, because I was able to work with them to train law enforcement, right, on how to work with the Asian American community. And this year we were able to pass the language access legislation that will hopefully allow law enforcement to communicate better with our community members, like my grandmother. And the AG's office is helping, lead that, implementation. And it's been very empowering, to turn that painful moment into something positive, and to sort of flip that script. And I'm really grateful for the Attorney General's office for providing opportunities for our community to engage and work with all of you, because it's not only help us advocate for our community better. So much of this work is so personal. It's really benefited me tremendously.
Yeah, true. I mean, other communities have faced similar issues, and I'm glad we're actively talking about it and trying to bring a change, and there has been change, and of course, recognizing we do need more change. Rippy, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much, Sudha and Raman and Laura Fong, Mary, everybody on this call for inviting me to speak on this very important topic. It really is a privilege to speak on this panel with these panelists. I mean, they're all incredibly talented attorneys and pioneers, leaders in their own respective areas. So I feel very blessed to be a part of this group, first and foremost. Second, I want to say to Jeff, thank you for sharing what you just shared. That has to be very difficult to say openly, and I really applaud you for being so transparent and open. It's inspiring, and thank you. Thank you for that. I take a lot away from that in the sense that having shared experiences, like I think many on this call, coming to the country. I did immigrate from India to Toronto, Canada at the age of 2, and then came to the United States as a young adult by myself. But coming to Canada, growing up with that quote unquote smelly food and quote unquote not so cool haircut or lack thereof, because I'm a sick Punjabi person who normally, traditionally we don't cut our hair, but having gone through all those traumas that when you talk, Jeff, it reminds me, and they're shoved so back in the back of my head because I just focus on the here and now and the future and being grateful for what we have now and the opportunity to do the amazing work that we collectively all do on a daily basis. But I think having those experiences does propel us now where we feel we have a voice and we have a platform such as this to actually be honest and open. So, I've gone through my own fair share of discriminatory behaviors as a young adult, but I will say how I got involved with advocacy work in today's world is that different attorneys that I supported and worked with at Verizon said to me, you have a very interesting background story. You need to tell this, or you need to be the head of XYZ group or committee. And now I find myself involved with our employee resource groups at my work. I am a part of the Apollo organization. I'm the immediate past president of Saba, New Jersey, and having these roles gives me the authority and also the platform to actually bring out issues that our community goes through. And I think they're very much shared experiences that the community goes through. And I feel that all of us are in a position of privilege and power and influence, and we need to utilize that to our best abilities to help the others. It comes from being grateful, but wanting to give back to the community. And that's how I really got involved. People pegged me, and I've been doing it consistently for a very long time. And I'll be honest with you, I enjoy it just as much as my day job.
Yeah. That is so true what he said. We do have the privilege, the power, and we can bring about a change. Sapna?
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for having me as a panelist. I, too, have a pretty personal story. I was always very interested in government and advocacy, but it was 9/11 that sort of changed it for me. I know that everyone has a story of what they went through. And I lived in Edison, New Jersey since 1983, and we had a very large Asian population. And what a lot of people don't talk about is that there was a lot of backlash during those days, and it still is going on. But many of our places of worship, our mandirs, our masjids, and our gurudwaras were vandalized. People were passing by in cars and throwing garbage at people and eggs in Little India. And we know, unfortunately, that there are a number of people that were thrown in jail without even being Mirandized. There were people who had lost their lives because people had thought that they were, quote, terrorists. And I remember the turning point was when my family put the American flag outside my house. And I still think about that as if it happened yesterday, because, I would be going to funerals of my classmates at Rutgers who had passed away 9/11. And then I was coming home where every single one of my neighbors were putting out American flags to say, hey, we're Americans too. And that was when I had started becoming very active in the local Democratic Party and trying to see if I can get a seat at the table, whatever that may be, because I didn't know. I voted every election, but I didn't really know what it meant to have a seat. I joined ALDEF. Many of you know there was a lot of voting issues with Asian Americans who were trying to vote at the polls. And at one point, even Department of Justice was involved. And I got involved with APALA. And that's where it started for me. And it's still fighting.
Thank you, Sapna. I do remember the time around 9/11 when the uproar in Edison, and I know you were very involved in the community. Next, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us on here. I think each one of us feel very privileged to be able to have this forum to speak. I know there's a lot of work. So, I mean, for me, I think it's an amalgamation of everybody's stories, right? I'm an immigrant to the United States from the Philippines, but the word privilege really sort of sticks out more than anything, because I think I did have a very privileged life, whether I was in the Philippines or even when I was in the US. I grew up in a small town in Somerset County where I almost feel as if we were in a bubble, nobody was outwardly racist to me, right? I did not feel the pressures of racism, although I recognize now as an adult that they were there. And my parents tried to shield me from them. And I see it more on the impact on my brother, because I recognize, so as Suda had said, my last name is Vallejo. I pronounce it specifically the way that we would pronounce it in the Philippines. My brother pronounces it Vallejo, right? He actually Americanized his name because people could not pronounce it the way that we did, right? And so as an adult, I see what I probably had gone through and just had blinders on, or was lucky enough that I was shielded from. So as life went on, I always saw myself as somebody who was privileged enough to get into college without question, privileged enough to get into law school, privileged enough to have the ability to be a journalist. And for me, it was always advocacy, right? Advocacy as a journalist to be the last watchdog of society, recognizing that journalism was starting to change. And rather than writing the story after the fact, I want to be proactive. I want to be part of that change in that story, which is what led me to be an attorney. And what we do as attorneys is advocacy every day, right? Whoever our client is, we advocate for them. But this change into advocacy for the Asian American community, the AANHPI community, really started as part of when I became part of the bar associations, right? I was always part of the Hudson County Bar Association, but I think when you take it to a statewide level, like New Jersey State Bar Association, APALA NJ, you'll recognize a lot of us are APALA NJ members, right? And I don't think that's a coincidence, because I think when you surround yourself with like-minded people, it also generates conversation that you may not have realized before, right? Sharing these stories, these really touching and personal stories like Jeff and Sapna were talking about, right? That they sort of galvanize you. And through the state bar, I became a chair of the diversity committee, where all of a sudden I had a forum, right? I had the ability to put together programs, had the ability to talk with people from different ethnic groups, which was fantastic. But what I did notice, I felt as if we were a little quieter than everybody else, right? Whether right or wrong, from my perspective, our voice didn't resonate as much. And sometimes that's our fault, right? And sometimes we are, candidly, people consider us sort of like the non-minority, right? We're the good minority. And some view that as a positive, but it also, I view it as, it hampers us sometimes to get our point across. And so once I got into sort of that diversity world within the state bar and becoming active in APALA NJ, I really started taking a look at the different organizations that we're part of, including my own, my firm, right? You start seeing that one of these things is not like the other. It's usually me in that room. I don't get treated differently than anybody else, at least not to my knowledge, right? I don't know what's being said behind my back, but at the end of the day, there is something to be said when you don't see other folks that look like you, which I'm sure we're going to touch on later, but that is really where the advocacy for me comes in, right? Because if you don't see somebody else rising to the same level as you, or where you're hoping to be, whether it's on the judiciary level and the management table, right? Things like that, it tends to hold you back. And my view is that I'm lucky enough, I'm privileged enough to be able to get to sit at the table in most places. It's my job, really. That's what it is. It's my responsibility to pull everybody up as I can.
Yeah. Thank you, each of you, for sharing your experiences. Next, I would like to, each of you have worked to promote solidarity and alliance within the communities. What strategies can we employ to promote the solidarity and alliance between the Asian Pacific American communities and other marginalized groups? Jeff, go first, please.
I think we really have to be intentional, and we have to look at how our experiences and our histories are intertwined. There are a lot of people out there that seek to divide, different groups. At the very highest levels of our government, we have different groups of color or marginalized groups, and we often kind of don't look at the common issues, we face. After, the murder of George Floyd, Gallup did a study and actually found that Asian Americans actually ranked second after Black Americans and wanting major changes in policing. Black Americans were at 88%. Asian Americans were at 82%, followed by Latinos at 63%, right? So I think as Asian Americans, we also have to look at our connections with other communities, not just ourselves. In New York City right now, there's been a really troubling case, the Wynn Rosario case, involving a 19-year-old Bangladeshi American who was experiencing a mental health crisis and was shot and killed by the police. So we really have to look at these issues, impacting all of us, right? I think someone said this, Sapna, it's really important for us to be part of the conversation, to be, at that table. So for us at AAPI New Jersey, we've really done the most effective way we've done this is really through coalition, right? We're part of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. We were the first Asian American group in New Jersey to come out in support of reparations for slavery as part of the Say the Word campaign. So for us, I think the really great thing about our state is we have such robust groups and coalitions that have been around for a long time. I think for me in the Asian American community, it's like making sure we're part of that, we're included.
Thank you. Rippy? You're muted, Rippy.
You would really think 3 years into this that I would not have made the mute mistakes. Sorry about that. I was going to say one of the ways that I find myself bringing the community together really is by showing up. Showing up, and half of the battle is showing up and showing your support by being there, listening and offering support, whether it's connecting networks and people with each other to further their programs, initiatives, and to be there for them. And one of the main ways that I feel that my contributions to the Asian Pacific American communities is by being a part of Saba, New Jersey and APALA, where we do provide resources to the legal community, and we do support those who don't otherwise have complete access. So we feel that we're bringing together those groups serving those groups of people. One of the ways that I think is so easy to promote solidarity and alliances with the use of social media, especially with our young folks, is that you can be on social media and amplify one another so easily to show support. When Maria posts all her wonderful posts on whether it's Instagram or on LinkedIn, it is so easy to hit like, put a comment in there and share it with a few words of your own. That kind of amplification publicly goes a long way. Not that Maria needs it from me or anything like that, but it's nice to show that to each other. One thing that I want to share with you is very recently at the end of March, Saba, New Jersey had a women's event, and I asked Laura Fong if she would join us, because anytime Laura Fong is on a panel, it's a privilege to hear her speak. She came, she was very busy, but she made the time to come. And I feel like that presence goes a long way, publicly showing people who don't look like us that we stand together, we support one another. It goes a long way. And this has been told to me many, many times by the general public.
Thank you, Rippy. I know, talking about the social platform, I know you initiated the Attorney of the Week feature in LinkedIn to showcase and highlight notable achievements of diverse attorneys. What motivated you to do this? I mean, I personally thought that was a wonderful idea. Just what motivated you to do this?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. It is one of my greatest accomplishments in life, I will say. It came from having conversations with women of color back in April of 2020. They were worried about losing their jobs during the pandemic, not being able to sustain their business, their book of business, getting new business because they weren't out meeting people, attending events, especially networking events. So we had a couple of calls, two of my Women of Excellence Network sisters and I was hearing what they were saying, and I thought to myself, I'm an in-house counsel. I've got a voice. How can I utilize this to help? Thought about it, came up with this. Okay, you know what? At first, it was just like, oh, let me randomly every so often highlight somebody on LinkedIn and post about them so other people know who they are. And I'm very blessed to tell you that I have, I think, well over 27,000 LinkedIn connections. But so what I was trying to do is utilize that platform to help others, especially attorneys of color. And so, and it didn't matter if you were AAPI or Hispanic or African American, it did not matter to me. So what happened was, I developed these guidelines on my own and gave it a shot. And in July, I published my first one. And now I'm coming on my 4th anniversary in July. I'm so excited. I really want to throw myself a party for that. And I've highlighted more than 175 attorneys. And it's just remarkable to have that platform. And now people actually reach out to me and tell me how much they like the series. I've gone to conferences where they say, wait a minute, are you Rippy Carta, the one who does the Attorney of the Week? And to me, when I hear that, I'm just flabbergasted and just so humbled at the following. So number one, yes. So I'm just so humbled by all of that. But it came from a position of, again, power, influence, opportunity, and to utilize that to help the community.
That is a great initiative, and a number of people have spoken about that. That is a wonderful. Thank you, Rippy. Sapna?
Just to parrot what Jeff and Rippy said, with the social media, it's education. A lot of people don't realize that people in the Asian American community not only are from different ethnicities, different religions. I mean, it goes on. And we're sort of unlike other groups, other minority groups, in the sense that we're grouped together, all these countries, and that's what makes it harder. But education and telling people how to live, and how to get the most of their life and living life on their terms is probably going to be the key. And social media hopefully can bring people together that generally would not. The other day I was explaining to somebody how the system works when, very, very basic social structures in communities where other communities might have mentoring, but, when you come from an immigrant household, your only focus is to go to work and get a paycheck, right? It's not about, okay, I'm worried on how I can change from a cannabis shop from opening up down the street, or my taxes, or I'm worried about my child not getting certain attention in school. I mean, these are very basic life issues, but it's also being part of the community and being educated on how to do it.
Thank you, Sapna. I know you have been very involved in the local politics. Can you please tell us how you became as an elected official?
Yeah, it's kind of like a funny story. Well, I think it's funny now. Not wasn't at the time. So after 9/11 happened, I started, joining campaigns and stuffing envelopes and all that, that fun stuff that people have. And then I found out about something called a committee person. I never heard about it before. Remember, the only thing I ever did was I voted every election. And then, this person said to me, well, if you're a committee person, you represent a district, and then you get to pick who the council people are, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, oh, this sounds great. So in 2009, there was a mayor named June Choi, and he was the first Asian American mayor in my town, graduated from my high school. And he said to me, well, why don't you run off the line as a committee woman? And I said, okay, so I campaigned. I went through each of the houses. I told them all the things I'd like to do, like maybe even push to even get the street paved, some simple things, in the neighborhood. I ended up winning. And then I immediately, in 2009, decided that I was going to run for council because I wanted that seat on the table. So I go visit the local party boss, and he meets me, and he's like, I don't even know if you're electable. I said, of course I am. first of all, I'm charming, is there anything more that you need? At the time, and for people's Edison history, we had one councilman who had only served one term and he had lost. And we had one gentleman also 20 years before had been on the school board. And then we had one woman who had recently got, from the Asian community that got elected to school board. And this is a community that maybe had 45% of Asian Americans. And so I said, okay, how about if I make a deal with you? I run for school board, and if I win, you put me on the line for council. He goes, okay. So I must have walked close to 2,000 homes. And I beat out 9 other candidates. And then the next day I showed up at the local party's bus and I said, I'm here and I'm ready to get mentored. And so he did, and he put me on the line for council. I had to end up running against 12 other candidates and then ended up becoming the first Asian American woman on the Edison Council. But it was tough. When I say that my tour started at 9/11, I didn't get elected until 2010 and then again in 2013. So it took a long time. It took a long time to get there. But I felt like I had a seat on the table finally, and we can deal with issues that the community was dealing with. And, sometimes not everybody took all of my ideas. Some ideas did get through, and we were able to move forward as a community.
But you are charming. That I would have to agree with.
That's what I said. That's what I said.
So, once you had the seat at the table, what changes did you bring about? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the first thing is that we increased the, in the police force minorities. We wanted some members of the community to be reflective. And it was very tough. We actually also didn't have any officers that were in the top brass in a supervisory position. So we were able to promote one individual who was Asian American. And, you have to have that fight, that initial push, and then the rest. And, what happened was too, is that, even though Asian Americans have been living in Edison since the late 1970s, if you looked at the committee and you looked at the council and the school board and the political, they were not getting involved, whether it was involuntarily or voluntarily. And so that pushed also where we had an increase of Asian Americans as committee people. I also recruited Laura Fong to be on the school board, and she became the first East Asian American woman on the school board with me. And thank you. I'm very grateful that she did it because we were part of this whole movement of people who wanted everybody to be involved. But, it's baby steps.
Yep, I know Edison, the town you are in, is a diverse community.
Yeah.
You have brought in a lot of change, including holidays in the school board, correct?
We did. And thank Laura Fong for getting Lunar New Year day off, and I pushed for Diwali. And then after that, really happy to hear that Eid now is a day off. And, and what was crazy is when I had initially proposed it, I remember my parents had fought for it and were not able to get it with other parents. And here I was now in a position on the school board to say, you have two elementary schools that were 100% Asian. And I actually, unfortunately, at that time, and maybe I shouldn't say as well, say it anyway, the NJEA, the local chapter, had said to me, can we like not close school? And I said, all of your students are celebrating Diwali. like how can we say, I just thought there was a little bit of a tone deafness, and we had to push that in. Sometimes you become a bad guy, but you had to do that. And, I said, listen, just like anybody else's holiday, they deserve to celebrate as anybody else should be. And then, it's spread with, the other school districts. But I heard a lot of, I was born and raised here in America, and I heard a lot of go back to your country if you want to celebrate, bleep, bleep, your holiday. I got letters at my home, but sometimes change is uncomfortable.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Sapna. Maria, I want to go back to the question, what strategies can we employ to promote solidarity and alliance between the Asian Pacific American communities and other marginalized groups?
So I think you've heard a lot of them, right now. As Rippy said, support is one of the biggest things we can do. And it's the easiest thing. There's sort of like the spectrum of things that we can do to try to create this alliance. One of the easiest ones, just show up to an event. Your face alone and bringing other people with you shows that we are supporting them and they will support us in turn, right? So that's an easy one. The social media is a fantastic way to do it too, right? Because it is really outward facing and you're getting people's names and their events out there. When you can, try to share those things that are super easy ones. The ones that are a little bit harder, right, and require for you to be tuned in is whole programming, right? So I will intentionally try to have programs with diverse speakers. And I don't care what the subject is, because my view is I'm not just supporting you on the diversity front. At the end of the day, for those of all attorneys, right, my practice area is litigation and land use. Being diverse is not a separate concept from what I do in my practice. There are diverse attorneys who practice land use. There's diverse attorneys who are litigators. And so when we are doing presentations like this, when doing presentations for the state bar or any forum, right? I think we have to really have an eye and say, okay, is this a cross-section of our community? If it's not, then affirmatively change it, right? I'm very conscious of who I put on panels, in part because I want to show the diversity, but I also want to showcase people. Because if we're advocates, if we give people the opportunity to have that same voice, we all started somewhere, right? Somebody put us on a panel somewhere and let us babble on, and they let us keep doing it. And then that can change, it can snowball. Looking at Sapna, I mean, the political landscape is so difficult, and I applaud you because I do the behind the scenes stuff, and I see how hard it is. And she's right? You know, Rippy's right. You celebrate, but then you also have to push hard. You are going to be the bad guy sometimes. But what was fantastic about what Sapna did too was that she wasn't just pushing for the Asian American community, right? She was pushing for all diverse communities. And so it wasn't a singular voice. And so when you get the chance, I think it's incumbent upon us that we bring everybody together and we become a voice for everyone. Right. I often, while I identify, obviously, I'm Asian American, right? I'm Pacific Islander. But when I talk about diversity, I talk about it in the whole all the time. And I think if we start doing that more, and if you get that seat at the table, you get the mic in front of you, you're standing on the podium or on the dais, that's how we bridge the gap. And then effectively people start talking to one another.
Yeah, so true, Maria. Maria, as someone who had a career in journalism and now a partner at a well-established law firm, you've spent time in two professions where representation of Filipinas is not particularly high. How has that affected your approach to activism?
It's a little interesting, right? So in journalism, I was a print journalist. I was very much I didn't really want to put the makeup on. I didn't want to brush my hair. I actually tried it for a little while, and the comments I got was that, you know, you're not in print anymore. You need to comb your hair a little bit better. So I decided, okay, that's not where I belong, right? But what I recognized in having friends particularly in the broadcast journalism world, what you will notice is that there are more women than men, right? And there are a few Filipino women, particularly in New York, in the #1 market, right? And that's because there's this concept, and this has been said, I'm not talking out of turn here, it's actually been said inside newsrooms, we are much more palatable to look at, in their view, than an Asian male, right? The imagery that's conjured up by looking at an Asian male is that of like kung fu and hard and angry, right? Whereas women give this viewpoint, this look of being docile. So that's for the backdrop, recognizing that what you look like matters, what your background matters, irrespective of if it's journalism, and then now we're translating into law, right? I have had litigation in cases with fewer women. I still can count them on one hand, just women, let alone diverse. Diverse, I've got two. That's pretty much it, right? So there's a recognition by me that people are not only not Filipina or Filipino, they're just not diverse, period. right? And part of that is, are we able to prevent attrition in our respective areas? For me, one of the main reasons why I tend to stay in a law firm is because there's not a lot of female litigators and not a lot of Asian female litigators, right? So part of me kind of digs my heels in on that. And then there's a part of me that then turns around and uses that as a basis. If I have the ability to recruit for my firm, I have the ability to do the first interviews for the most part of any person who walks into my firm, whether it's on the associate level or lateral. And I'm really lucky about that. But I use that as sort of a springboard to try to bring more diverse people in, right? If I can. And Filipino people. I just interviewed a young Filipino woman. I was ecstatic, right? Like and I think that we tend to do this anyway, particularly with those of us who we're all part of APALA. We try to support one another and help one another out, do mentoring programs, right? It sort of changes the way we look at things. I don't look at them through the same lens. Can I go into a room and be comfortable when everybody is 95% white male? Absolutely, right? Because what we do. It's what we actually know more than anything. I notice it more when you go in a room and go, "Ooh, we got a lot of color in here, and it's fantastic," right? But so for my profession, what I try to do is get people on board. I make every effort to prevent attrition because there's a larger attrition when it comes to minority groups, right? I also, again, we're talking about panels and things like that. I like to get people in positions where they are seen and heard because I think we don't have enough of a voice. And so Filipino community has a slightly different background than any others, right? Just like everybody else. But so what I try to do is if I meet somebody, I try to hang out with them, spend time with them, try to help mentor them, try to get them out there to be able to speak. And if I can, help them get a job.
I would love to spend much more time going back and forth on a lot of various things, but in the interest of time, I just want to move on to Jeff. You are the founding board member of the AAPI New Jersey. Can you please tell us how AAPI New Jersey was formed?
Yeah, so we were founded by a group of Asian American women, mothers shortly after the Atlanta spa shootings in 2021, right? And I think a lot of the stereotypes about Asian women that Maria talked about really resonated with our community. And through that grief of the murders of 6 Asian women, many of our members saw ourselves, right, in the women. The violence they experienced, the discrimination. It was also happening during COVID when there was a rise in anti-Asian violence. And, we knew that this wasn't new, right? It reminded us about 9/11, what Sapna was talking about, and, the extremist violence against, the Indian community in the 1980s in Jersey City and elsewhere. And I think we had a group of people that really said like, enough, we're not gonna take it anymore. And we started doing everything from, self-defense classes to responding to bias incidents, which we do, every single week still, going into schools and asking for our heritage to be observed, and then looking at, systemic issues. We started meeting with elected officials. A lot of people have said, just showing up. I mean, we really just started showing up. And I think people were like surprised. We've gone to meetings and they're like, oh, we didn't know there were Asian people, even though we're, 11% of the population, right? And it was really through that we said, okay, we care about our kids, right? Many of them are being bullied in schools. They can't celebrate their heritage. Let's help organize large, massive community celebrations, right? One of our members said it was like taking, an Indian celebration and taking it out of the basement or the backyard, right? And it's on Main Street, right? And that's so meaningful for kids. But what can we do more, right? And what our group did and really coming together with Asian Americans across the state was really look at this curriculum mandate of making sure that our stories were taught in school, right? Many of us like don't remember our histories being reflected in our classroom, right? And that's extremely detrimental for kids, right? If they don't see themselves, being part of history, they don't see themselves as being part of it or being able to change it, right? And so that was a major accomplishment was getting that law passed, almost unanimous by the Assembly and the Senate in less than a year. The governor signed it. So we've been really trying to tackle all the different issues that impact our community. We want our community to be supported. We want our community to be healthy. We want our community to be connected to each other. So many of the issues we're facing, a lot of us are facing it silently, right? We're, thinking about mental health, for example. There's a lot of disparities within our community. A lot of things like don't add up, right? We're overrepresented in the healthcare profession, right, as nurses and doctors, but we're, as a community, least likely to have a primary care physician, right? Where Asian women are most likely to get, lung cancer. Asian women are most likely to, attempt suicide. The leading cause of death for Asian American young people is suicide. And these are sort of the issues that we want to, in addition to our advocacy work, really tackle, because we don't really necessarily have that infrastructure in place. So I think so much of our work right now is we're constantly moving. One of our members has an idea, we're always like, how do we make this work? And I think that's what makes, I think, this work so dynamic. It's just so much is happening.
Well, AANHPI New Jersey seems to have a broad agenda and specific strategic initiatives. Could you share some insights on how those initiatives and why they've been prioritized, how they've been prioritized, and why?
Sure. So we have several thousand members, and now we're statewide. We changed our name to reflect that. Our organization has the values of community, belonging, solidarity, and justice. And I'm probably missing one, but that's what comes to my mind. And we look at our initiatives, all of that as having to fit into those parameters. I think it's obviously responding, right, to a bias incident that we hear about, and we work with victims. We do that. But I think a very critical part of our work is, how do we create belonging, right? Asian Americans, there's a great annual survey from the Asian American Foundation, the Status Index, which I encourage folks to look at, surveys Asian Americans, but also, a cross-section of Americans of all backgrounds. Asian Americans are the least likely group to feel like they belong, right? So, I mentioned some of our initiatives that sort of address that. I think two things we're sort of prioritizing right now, listening to our members, is, how can we move past just, the idea of feeling safe, right? Or the absence of violence, right? Even though that's really hard because still so many of our community members still are afraid and dealing with that. But how do we move past that and focus on resilience and strength? What does that look like? What does our community need to feel strong? And one of the things that, and I'm really so inspired by Sapna's experience, I mean, so much of that right now is focused on how do we build our power, right? We're strong when we have power, right? And not being afraid to claim that word power. And that's being represented. I think right now in the legislature, there's like 5 or 6 of us, where we should be percentage-wise more than double that, right? We're sorely underrepresented. Nationwide, only 1% of all elected officials in the United States are Asian American, and over 80% of them are on school boards. So we are really trying, Sapna came to on our nonpartisan candidate training. I mean, we're really trying to build that pipeline. You know, I think it's a little uncomfortable. I mean, I've gotten used to it, but I'm literally meeting Asian Americans and I'm like, second line is like, do you want to run for office? You know, but that's also because people like Apala and Jay reached out to me, you know, and I have close relationships and friendships developed through that community of people pushing me, right? Jeff, do you want it? And I'm like, why? I'm not going to become a judge, but you know, it's just that spark, right? Like what I think all the panelists are doing, which is so inspiring, is we're just pushing each other, right? We're giving each other the idea, the opportunities that like we may have never even considered, but at the very least, we need to present our community members with these opportunities.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for your work with the AANHPI New Jersey. I hear so much. Like I said, in the interest of time, I don't have, I would like to talk to you and the things that you've done and what you're doing currently. Sapna, turning to you, you've served as a resource for a program run by the Center for the American Women and Politics at the Rutgers Eagleton Institute of Politics that focuses specifically on training Asian women on the nuts and bolts of seeking elective office. When I first heard that, I thought that was really interesting. So my question is, why do you think a program like that is needed?
Thank you. And thank you, Jeff, for looking for candidates, because gotta get people in the pipeline. The program Ready to Run, actually I have to thank Laura Fong. She was actually one of the back in the day, one of the founding members of this program of, everything having to do with women in politics. And I was so moved at her story of how she had gotten involved. And a few of the members she had worked on, they're still a little active today. And this kind of just led into the whole thing where not only are Asian Americans severely underrepresented in the political atmosphere, the women, it's like on another planet how severely underrepresented they are. It's almost they don't even exist. And even in my own town, we had at one point 7 Asian American elected officials, and all those women are gone now. And gone in the sense of, they're outvoted, they're not dead. So like, it hurts me. And I think that you got to give the tools. We talk about education a lot in this panel. And, it's a 2-day, and I'm telling everybody who's sitting there, it's every March. And there's even one for African-American women and for Hispanic women. And obviously, if you don't want to go to either one of those 3, there's also a large program that is for all women. And it's usually like around the 13th or the 15th. There's scholarships available. So please go. And they teach you not only about like the basics of running for office, whether it's a committee person, it's a school board or a council or a commissioner, or an assembly or a senator. But it's also about behind the scenes. Not everybody everybody wants to put themselves out there. So they talk about also fundraising and getting the word out and social media and all of these really important things that are sort of like what I call the candidate family. And I think that if you don't have that, like you're not learning it, or it's not organic, you're going to have to find resources elsewhere. And I think specifically with the Asian American community, like, what Jeff is talking about, and he's going out and he's teaching people, which is like, to me, is like, that's like the best thing ever. But we need to also continue to provide resources that way. So there's a lot of people who have been inspired out of it. And I have seen candidates that have come out of that program, and they always say, if it wasn't for Ready to Run, and I say, well, thank God for Laura Fong, because, that's where it was something that she had thought about, and she told me about it, and I told somebody else about it, and we can just keep moving forward.
Thank you, Laura. It is a wonderful program. It's a very important one. And if you're interested in politics, that is a program to be in. Next, I want to turn to Rippy. You are the chairperson of the recently created Asian American Pacific Islander Commission appointed by Governor Murphy. Can you talk a little bit about the efforts taken to identify and prioritize the needs of this diverse community?
So I want to really give a lot of credit here to Governor Murphy for realizing there's a need for this commission. I do think we were very much overdue for it, just because the experiences, the concerns, the issues that our community, collective community haven't really traditionally been best represented by other groups. Other groups have done a good job at representing us in the past, but I think we have specific concerns, and I'm very, very privileged to serve in this role, and I don't take my responsibilities lightly. We are tasked with bringing forth issues relating to financial freedom, concerns, challenges, healthcare, education, immigration, well-being, personal well-being, safety, security, many different pillars. And we've created committees to address those needs. We're going to be circulating a survey coming out very soon. And I encourage, if you do receive it, that you share it with other people who can provide their input as well, because based on that survey, we will then have access to more resources, as well as looking at different initiatives and programs to support our community. There's so much work to be done. We're looking at even putting the survey out in different languages to be a little bit more inclusive of the community. As Jeff mentioned earlier on, that his grandmother didn't speak English, but there are so many people still in our country today that don't speak English, which is absolutely fine, and we need to make sure that their voices are heard as well. But it is an very important commission, and I really applaud our governor and his office for providing the resources, setting it up. And we have approximately 40 of us commissioners on there right now working diligently. We meet every month diligently. There are programs, there are events that we share with one another, and we really look forward to making some sort of impact. And there's going to be a report that will be generated at the end of this year about our work. So please look for that.
Thank you. That is a wonderful. I know we are running out of time, but I just have a couple of quick questions. One for you, Rippy. You do a lot of voluntary community-based things outside of your full-time responsibilities and as an in-house attorney at Verizon. How do you do it all? 60 seconds.
I sleep less. Laura's laughing because she knows this. I sleep less than normal people, I would say, or what is considered a normal amount. But I feel like, once again, we keep saying this, we're in a position of privilege. We have worked so hard to get to where we are. And I feel like it is my responsibility to make my mark, to build that legacy, and to serve the community. And one of the things that I've experienced, unfortunately, we talk about challenges as attorneys, and I know you said 60 seconds and I'll talk faster, but one of the things that I find that it really is disturbing to me is when Asians, I'm going to put everybody in one category, Asians do not support other Asians. It is the bane of my existence. There is so much success, so many opportunities for everybody to go around. There's no need for us to compete with one another and put each other down. We need to uplift our community, and we really need to come together. And I find that the people on this panel have done a fabulous job doing that. And I hope that we can emulate that into our respective communities even further.
Maria, you've served on the New Jersey Supreme Court committees and on district ethics committees, been a director of the New Jersey Asian Bar Association, and been active in the New Jersey State Bar Association as trustee. How have you prioritized the areas in which you've chosen to be active?
So I'll be really quick. I know we're running out of time.
Thank you.
Specifically choosing activities or forums that I actually have a voice in. Not that I have a voice in and I can actually effectuate change, right? To me, that's the most important thing. I think all of us, and I don't care where you are in your life struggles or where you are in your career, our time is precious. So choose the few things. You don't have to spread yourself thin. Choose the few things where someone's going to give you a voice, or you've got a shot to make a difference, whether that's politics, bar associations, within your firm. And that's what I do. So I chose the ones that I thought I could do the most good in a short period of time.
Thank you. We're running out of time. I'm going to hand it over to Brian Ragunan. Thank you very much.
First, I want to thank all our panelists for taking the time to appear. I want to thank them for all the good work they do. Second, I'd like to thank the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, as well as Chief of Staff Raja for putting this presentation together and all their good prep. I want to thank the members of our ERG, as well as our executive sponsor, Deputy Director, Kaveen Mistry. And I also want to thank everyone here for attending. Again, I know everyone's very busy, so I don't want to take any more of your time. But I did see a common thread here from a lot of our speakers to take small steps. And I'm going to put one small step out for everybody here or other employees to try to join our ERG. It's for, again, our broad APA community as well as allies. And you can join that by emailing apa.erg@njoag.gov. You can reach out to me, Brian Ragunan. We'll definitely make sure you get on the list. And or reach out to me with any other concerns that you have that affect our community here, internally, externally, statewide. And again, I just want to say thank you to everyone for all your efforts. Thank you.